What is a reactive parent?
Phew. So to give you an example, like when things get hard. So, if you're a dad or even if you're a mom out there listening, you have a moment with your kids where it's stressful, right? It's conflict, it's tension, things aren't going the way that you want it to be. We as human beings, we have a tendency to just react like reflexively, right? We don't put a lot of intentional thought into what comes next. It really is, we're acting based off of kind of our past, like what we saw other people do, how we saw them handle stress, our own fears that we have and in our desires. And like all of that is sort of like hardwired in us. And so something happens and we just react, right? There's not a lot of thought. That's what I would define as a reactive parent.
When did you realize that you had those traits and that it was something that that wasn't beneficial?
Yeah, when I look back on it now, I can see, a lot of instances when I was reactive. There are a couple that kind of come to mind. And one, I didn't get my evidence of my reactivity until like a couple years later. And it was when my son used the phrase, "How dare you?" to somebody. And my son said that, and he was probably 7. And I realized exactly where he learned that. And it was from me. And like, I heard him say it, and he said it like in kind of a joking way, but it made my ears ring because it took me back. I remember exactly where I was when I said that to him. When I said that, he was probably 5. And like, I say this with a lot of regret. I'm not proud of the dad that I was in that moment of conflict with him, where I felt like how I was being treated was unfair. I'm a dad. I'm working hard. I'm sacrificing. I have all these good intentions to provide for my kids, and I want to be a good dad. And like in that moment, I felt like whatever was being served to me wasn't fair. Like I didn't deserve that. And so I said, how dare you talk to me like that? And those words, in my opinion, are meant for another adult. Those aren't meant to fall in the ears of a 5-year-old. But I had so much going on inside me that a 5-year-old kid was able to bring that out of me. And so it's a moment that I'm not proud of at all. And it's, I'm on this path to not put myself in that situation anymore when I'm reacting. And instead of like that reflexive action, now I respond and I respond with intention.
Yeah, a lot of when it comes to change, it has to do with self-awareness. And it must be very because you think about a kid picking up a repeated trait or habit. It's one thing to say, all right, I did that once, and if I keep doing it again, my very impressionable child will pick this up. So I need to make sure to only do repeated good habits instead of repeated bad habits. But it must have been shocking to realize that one instance was enough to make this a part of this child's lexicon.
Yeah, it was jarring, to say the least. And like, there's a lot of science about how the brain forms in young kids, and especially, from when they're a newborn up until about the time when they're 6, where, what they observe basically just gets sort of like hard coded in their brain as true, right? Like the discerning part of their brain doesn't start to come online around 6 or 7 years old. And that's when they can start to question things like, is that how I'm supposed to be? Or is that really true? And so in those early formative years with kids, we need to be especially careful of how we're showing up for our kids, because they just see that as the way a dad is supposed to be, right? And I've made major changes in my life since then, and I'm working on, undoing some of those bad habits that I modeled for them. I get feedback from my kids now. That's one of the things that I really believe in, is being vulnerable as a dad, which, like, that role of being a dad is, like an authority figure to our kids, but I don't want to wield that authority. Like, I don't know if I've ever said because I said so in the past couple of years since I've made these changes in my life, because in my opinion, that's a cheap escape route for a dad. That means, like, I'm uncomfortable with explaining why this is my answer. And so instead of doing something that makes me uncomfortable, I'm just going to say it's because I said so. So I take it the other way, where I'm vulnerable. And I think it's okay to tell our kids, like, hey, like, sometimes I don't do the right thing, or I don't have all the right answers. Or if you go through a particularly, like, tough moment with your kids, and, like, after the dust settles and, like, our emotions have kind of come back down to baseline, I'll go and ask my kids, I'll be like, hey, give me a grade. Like, that was tough, right? And they're like, yeah, that was tough. I'll ask them, how did I do? Like, give me a grade. And there's been times when, I thought I just did, like, okay, could have done better. And my kids have been like, you know what? You did good. And, like, they refer to old dad, like the old version of me, which, like, fills my heart with joy, because they're able to see that if there's an old me, there must be a new me, right? And so that's, like, proof that the work that I'm doing is paying off. But they're like, oh yeah, like, the old version of you, like, you probably would have gotten pretty upset about that, but you handled this really well. I'm like, that feels great. And then on the flip side, there's been times where I'm like, hey, how'd I handle that? And inside I'm like, I did pretty good. And my daughter will be like, I gave you a C+. And I'm like, okay, I appreciate that honesty, but I love opening up that conversation with my kids, being vulnerable, letting them have a voice to, like, communicate feedback to this authority figure that's in their life. I'm a big proponent of that.
Oh yeah, over communication, and even in the industries, the highest form of compensation is communication. Whoever's responsible for communicating the terms or communicating the deal typically are the ones who receive the most commissions and lucrative salaries.